Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, I am back in Sweden and I'm staying in my friend's basement for the moment while I sort out a few things with new apartments and stuff like this. So quite exciting times actually. But yeah, a new place to film a couple of videos. So I hope that the lighting and things is all right in here. So I will play around with that over the next few videos. But yeah, since we're back in Sweden, I thought we would kick off with something local, and this is a beer that I am really quite excited for actually. So for this review, we are going to stick to my home county of Skåne here in the very south of Sweden. We're returning to a brewery that's featured on the channel a good number of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys in the past, many different styles, but the one that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I've not tried from them before, and it's the style where my whole love of craft beer actually began. So hopefully this is another good one. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this beer as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Eslöv, which is a little bit to the northeast of me here in Lund, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Remmarlöv Gårdsbryggeri. So this particular beer is called Rauchbier. It comes in at 5.2% ABV, and as the name suggests, this one is a Rauchbier, or a smoked lager, in other words. So yeah, very curious to see how this one turns out. As you'll know if you've watched the channel for any length of time, my whole love of craft beer began with the Bamberg Rauchbier, Schlenkerla, Spezial, things like this. So really cool to find another Rauchbier from one of my local breweries here in Skåne. So let's see how we get on with this one then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Remmarlöv Gårdsbryggeri before, and hopefully we can add some more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Remmarlöv Gårdsbryggeri then. So Remmarlöv Gårdsbryggeri, as I've mentioned to you before, are based on a farm in Eslöv to the northeast of me here in Lund, and these guys have been brewing since the autumn-winter of 2014, and in January of 2015 they started selling their beers through Systembolaget. But the owner and founder for this company is Håkan Nilsson, and together with his wife Michelle, he'd started his plan for a brewery a few years prior to this actually, and it's located on his family farm. Håkan is apparently the 5th generation of his family to farm the countryside here in Skåne. But the old barn was renovated and a brew house of 1,500 litres was installed, and Hampus Olofsson was hired as the brewer in August of 2014, having previously worked for Malmö Brewing Company, one of my favourite breweries here in Skåne, of course. But over the last few years, these guys have been gradually expanding their capacity. They now have a 3,000 litre brew kit, and they invested in new fermentation tanks in the spring of 2018, which apparently takes their annual capacity up to a possible 800,000 litres of beer per year. But in 2019, they opened up their summer pub, which was opening every Wednesday, and they were planning further expansion over 2020, but of course COVID-19 hit, and that caused a lot of problems for a lot of people. So yeah, they haven't been able to do their expansion yet from what I understand, but hopefully that is something they can do sometime in 2022. But as of September 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 75 different kinds of beer, and as I've mentioned to you before, they do lots and lots of different styles. So yeah, I mean, probably my favourite beers I've had from these guys would be the Red Slope, if I remember the name rightly, the Imperial Red that they always do at Christmas. That's pretty good. The Local Hops one that they do as well is always very interesting. So yeah, these are definitely beers that you should check out if you get the chance. But these guys release a couple of beers every month through Systembolaget and the Lokala Småskalig. So if you can get a hold of them, I would recommend that you give some of them a try. And it's quite cool actually. These guys are one of the most prolific breweries here in Skåne at the moment actually. So definitely worth checking out if you get the chance. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Remmarlöv Gårdsbryggeri for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can check out the Rauchbier, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, that is it for your history section. Let's get on and have a look at the beer itself. So just to let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. I hope that my behind the camera light is not reflecting off this a bit too much. I bought one of these ring lights and it's pretty cool actually. But yeah, it looks pretty nice, this can. Quite classic in German, which I think is good. There you can see at the top of the can, Remmarlöv Gårdsbryggeri. Maybe I can change the tint of the light actually. Let's try this and see if we do the more yellow light, I think this actually works a little bit better. There you go. You can see it, Rauchbier, Remmarlöv Gårdsbryggeri. Looks very good. 330ml can. I'm not sure exactly what I paid for this one, in honesty. But I think it might have been about 25 or 30 kroner. So yeah, we'll just need to see. But let me change the colour of the light back. The blue one. No, I think the white one works better in terms of the colour of the video. But yeah, just to let you see the can, we can change it to yellow. But yeah, looks very nice, this one, as we say. So 330ml can. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. The Remmarlöv Gårdsbryggeri Rauchbier, 5.2% ABV. Now, just get that. So, as I've mentioned to you earlier, this beer is a lager beer. By definition, a lager beer is a beer that uses a bottom fermenting yeast. In other words, cold temperature fermentation. It takes place between about 8 to 10 degrees Celsius. Ales, of course, are top fermenting yeasts, and their fermentations take place between 15 and 18 degrees Celsius. There's lots of different types of lagers, of course, and Rauchbiers basically are just smoked malt lager beers. So quite often Rauchbiers will use beech smoked malt actually, and I'm not sure exactly what they will have used in this one, but I guess we can maybe have a guess at it from the aroma and things like that. But yes, smoke, a Rauchbier, Rauch in German of course is smoke. Those of you watching Sweden will know this, of course, Ruk in Swedish. But yeah, this looks really nice actually. So in terms of the colour of this one, if we shine the light through this beer, this is a lovely dark sort of chestnutty mahogany colour. You can see that this one's poured with about a 2/3 finger of a frothy, I would say kind of fawny coloured head there. The colour of the head has kind of gone down a little bit with this one, but yeah, a nice kind of fawny coloured head on this beer, but a rich dark kind of mahogany colour to the beer overall. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But you also have the other thing that's going to play a role will be the any barrel aging that you do and any adjuncts that you put in. But when it comes to beers like this, you don't really have to care about that that particular variable, of course. But yeah, it looks pretty nice, this one. This is kind of what you would expect from a Rauch beer, of course, a lovely dark sort of mahogany chestnutty kind of colour. So it certainly looks the part, I have to say. But yeah, I'm quite happy with that in terms of appearance. There's 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass. There's a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there, and the beer itself is crystal clear. So that's kind of interesting as well. But yeah, it looks it does look very, very nice. So yeah, nothing more that we really need to say about the appearance of this one, to be honest with you. So I guess we can have a look at the aroma and see how we get on. Curious about this for sure. Oh yeah, that smells very, very nice. Yeah, the aroma of this beer, it's a big nostalgia hit for me. As I've said to you before, my whole love of these beers began with the Schlenkerlas and things like that, and my German flatmate Daniel, who's been on 1 or 2 of the videos that we've done on the channel actually. But yeah, he and I have had some really, really nice times drinking Rauch beers, so I absolutely love going back to these. And when you find Rauch beers from somewhere else in the world, I always think that's pretty cool. But yeah, the aroma of this one is really, really nice. It's everything you'd expect. It's nice and, you know, smooth and bready. It's got a bit of woodiness to it. It's got the smokiness in there, a wee bit of sweetness and hoppy character. It's got everything you want. So thumbs up to Remmarlöv Gårdsbryggeri for this. I just hope that the flavour in this one is as good as the aroma, because I think the aroma is pretty accurate. I mean, when it comes to these lager beers, of course, I like to kind of rate them in terms of authenticity. So yeah. But yeah, aroma wise, where do we start with this one then? So the backbone of this beer for me is really more woody than anything else. It's got that lovely kind of smooth woody backbone to it, and you can smell that it's, you know, beech is not quite as smooth and as sweet almost as wood in its aroma, as oak in its aroma. Sorry, brain fart there. So yeah, you can smell that sort of smooth beech woody backbone to this one. On top of that though, for me, you get a lot of bread. It's got that nice kind of smooth German kind of wholemeal brown bready kind of element there. You can smell that sitting on top of the kind of beachy woody character, but then you've also got a wee touch of nuttiness to this one and almost a little bit of leatheriness coming out of this beer too. So yeah, it's got a lovely big kind of leathery character coming out of it, this one also, which I can certainly appreciate. Yeah, I love that about this one. This one, I think the more that you smell of this beer, it actually gets a little bit more kind of leathery, which I can certainly appreciate. Aroma out of this one is very, very nice actually. Yeah, gets a thumbs up from me, this for sure. So on the within that kind of bready note, you do get a little bit of brown sugar. I think there is a wee bit of a kind of toasty, caramelly note to this one actually. I definitely get a wee bit of a toasty caramel and a sort of McVitie's digestive biscuity element out of it, and of course that sits on top of all the bread, and the kind of smoky character that you get out of this is quite meaty. Of course, I've explained this in other videos that I always find the Scottish peaty smoke is more earthy and grassy, whereas the German Rauch smoke is a little bit more sort of meaty and porky and stuff like this, and you certainly in this beer will notice that difference. So yeah, this one comes across as really nicely, really kind of porky and meaty, and it just works very, very well. So yeah, I think it just goes together. It works really, really nicely for me. So it gets a big thumbs up in that regard. So yeah, I think the malty side of this one is just really, really well done. It's quite authentic. It actually smells as if it's going to be a little bit thicker than some of the ones we've had in Germany before, which is quite interesting because I think it's actually quite difficult to beat the regular Schlenkerla in terms of the smoky hit that that's going to give you. But I think this one is going to lean towards the more bready and slightly woody side of things. So we'll need to see how that pans out. But yeah, I think this is going to be pretty good actually. So let's have a little look at the hoppy side of the beer then, just to round off the aroma. So for me, hoppy side of things is kind of what you expect. I suspect this beer will be using you know, one of the classic German tops, you know, the Hallertau, the Tettnang or something like this. Most likely the Hallertau, because this style originates from the Franconia region in northern Bavaria, Bamberg, Nuremberg, this kind of area. Highest density of breweries per head of population anywhere in the world, incidentally. So many good beers there. But yeah, I think it will, since that's in Bavaria, I think it's most likely that they'll be using Hallertau hops in this one. So it's got a little bit of smooth earthiness in there. You get a little bit of herbal character, some nice floral aromaticity, and a bit of grassiness there as well. But also some nice kind of wet, leafy grassiness in there. I wouldn't say this beer's got any sort of zestiness to it or anything like that. This one is more of a kind of wet, leafy, grassy character. On the fruity side of things with this one, it's got a wee bit of a kind of red fruitiness to it, but a very soft red fruity note for me. So you certainly get a wee bit of a kind of, there is almost a little bit of that kind of peary sort of thing, but yeah, it's a very soft, kind of slightly figgy note that you get out of this. Maybe a teeny little hint of blackcurrant, but yeah, fruity side of the beer for me. Yeah, a little bit of candied strawberry, a little bit of a light figgy kind of note. Yeah, I think that's what's going on in this beer, to be quite honest with you. Yeah, the aroma of this one is quite nice, I have to say. I do like how this beer goes about its business in that regard. So yeah, aroma wise, I think this one is pretty nice in that sense. It's very authentic, as I say, but one of the more bready leaning Rauch beers that I've come across in my travels for sure. So yeah, as I always say, take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. That's always half the experience with craft beers and whiskies and sakes and stuff like this. But I think it's about time that we try this one then. So yeah, this one is the Rauchbier, coming in at 5.2% ABV from Remmarlöv Gårdsbryggeri in Eslöv here in Skåne in the south of Sweden. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål, and cheers. Oh yeah, that's pretty nice, I have to say. It's kind of what I thought, to be honest. It is quite sort of bready. You know, it really does have that kind of big bready backbone, but you can smell that straight away in the malt. And what I would say about this beer is that it's one of these ones that does reflect its aroma quite well in the taste. So yeah, let's try and break this down a little bit further. So, yeah, where do we start with this beer then? Straight away then, across the middle third of your palate and the back third of your palate, you can feel that sort of beechwoody backbone there. That is the backbone of this beer. But on top of that, you can feel that nice kind of smooth, sort of German brown wholemeal bread. I really miss the German bakeries. You used to get some fantastic bread over there. But yeah, you can taste that nice kind of smooth German wholemeal brown bready sort of thing in there. There is obviously a bit of bread crust, a bit of the more kind of grainy bread crusty character to it as well. But yeah, I think it goes together really well. So that's the middle third and back third of your palate. Let's focus on the middle third of your palate for the moment. So towards the front of that middle third of your palate, you've got the smooth woody notes under there. You know, you can, you've got the smooth woody notes in there, but it almost feels a little bit sweet in a sense. You start to get some kind of nutty notes out of it. I was even tempted to say there's a little touch of vanilla to it, which kind of very unusual for a Rauchbier that, but I was almost tempted to say there was a very slight touch of vanilla in that front half, at the front third of your palate there. But like I say, smooth kind of nuttiness sitting on top of that, which I really like. But yeah, the way this beer goes together, I think, is really, really nice in that sense. So yeah, a few nutty, woody kind of things in there. You almost get a little touch of a leatheriness on that front half of the front third of your palate as well. But like I say, backbone is the beechwood and the brown bread. The brown bread kind of sits on top of those little subtleties that I was talking about. Now in the very centre of your palate, you can feel there is a wee circle there, and there's a bit of a kind of sweet caramelly note. You can certainly taste a little bit of that sweet caramelly note right in the dead centre of your palate. But as you move out towards the the edges of your palate there, you get a little bit more of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing coming out of that beer. So yeah, definitely a little bit more biscuity towards the edges of your palate for sure. So yeah, the brown sugary kind of McVitie's digestive sort of thing that comes out of this beer, I think is really, really quite nice in that sense. It just adds a wee bit more depth to the beer actually. The beer's actually a bit more balanced. I thought it was going to be like really, really bready, but in the middle third of your palate, it's actually got quite a bit of diversity to it. The brown sugar kind of balances it, and then all those little subtleties I talked about really balance the beer pretty well as well. So this one does have a good depth of flavour to it, so I like that about it. But it is big and bready on the back third of your palate. To be honest, I don't think we need to say any more really about the middle third of your palate, so let's focus on that back third of your palate. So border region between middle third and back third of your palate, there's a little bit of a bready build up in there, a wee touch of a bread crusty sort of thing. Woody notes underneath, some bread crust, thicker white bread. And then on top of that, you get the more kind of airy, yeasty kind of quality out of the beer. This beer, as I say, does have a bit, it's the yeast, I think, that gives you that more kind of airy, bready kind of note rather than anything else. And I think that's where the majority of the kind of bready flavour in this one's coming from. So when you start at the back of the palate with this beer, you can feel the flavour's quite tall, but as you come further forward, it condenses down. Then as you go into the middle third of your palate, it's a little bit more kind of squashed together in that sense. So I like that for sure. So yeah, I would say overall, it's actually nice and smooth. And I think the further you go into the aftertaste, the more you start to get the woody elements out of the beer. And I think the woodiness gets a bit drier the further you go back on the palate as well. But that's common, of course. Your sweet flavours come out towards the front of the palate, the drier and more bitter flavours come out towards the back. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, it's kind of what you'd expect. It's, you know, Hallertau, German noble hops in here, I would suspect. You know, Tecknang or Satz, of course, are options as well, but I heavily suspect it's Hallertau that's in this. But yeah, in the back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of a kind of smooth earthiness there. As you come further forward, it's a little bit herbal, and as you push towards the front corners of the palate, it's definitely more kind of floral and aromatic in that regard. So yeah, a lot more kind of floral aromaticity coming out of this beer there for sure. So yeah, I like that about this one. Nice big kind of floral aromaticity there, but not overly much. But round the front curve of the palate, a little bit lighter and grassy, and as we were picking up in the aroma, it's kind of a wet, leafy grassiness that you get out of this beer, I would say. So yeah, that's definitely worth pointing out as well. Yeah, interesting stuff, that's for sure. So, on the, I don't think we need to say more about the green component of this one, so let's focus on that front third of your palate then. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a little bit of a bready build up in there, some nice kind of bread crusty elements. The base of that front third of your palate, you certainly get a bit of more grainy bread crust in there, which is kind of interesting. A few woody elements as well, but sitting on top of that, you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer from the hops. So at the back of the front third of your palate, you certainly get a wee bit of a, you know, a sort of dried, peary, sultana-y type note there. You definitely get that. But as you move further forward, you get, you know, these kind of light, very slight red fruity kind of characters coming out of it. You know, the, how would we say, you get the sort of, yeah, the red fruity, you know, like a little bit of a, you know, a candied thing, a candied strawberry kind of thing. That's what you really get out of this beer actually for me. So yeah, the way that this one goes together in that sense, I think is pretty nice. I mean, you just get a little bit of a, you know, as I say, dried, a little bit of kind of dried pear, a little bit of sultana. Then further forward, you're getting a wee bit of that light figgy kind of note or whatever. I do think that goes together very, very well in this one. So it gets a big thumbs up to me, a big thumbs up from me in that regard. The fruity side of this beer is quite nice, and the sort of dryness you get out of the fruity character in this beer is in keeping with the other things and the woodiness that comes out of the beer a bit later on. So this is interesting for sure. You do get a wee bit of grassy zestiness. You get a very slight zestiness behind the very tip of the palate as well, I would say. But yeah, in terms of Rauchbiers, this one is pretty solid actually. So to round off with the mouthfeel then, I think this beer is bottom end and mid-bodied. Carbonation is very smooth. It's a bit oily and slick in some ways, and it feels clean, as you often get from these Scandinavian beers. I've always said that Scandinavian beers to me feel very clean, just the quality of water and things like that. The water profile plays a big role in the flavour of beers, I think. But yeah, in terms of hoppy bitterness and stuff, this is quite low IBU. I think we're talking 20 at the absolute most, somewhere between 15 or 20 IBUs, something like that. Malty base is quite, as we say, the woody character is quite sort of smooth and it has a little bit of dryness to it. You've got a nice kind of breadiness there that borders between being sweet, grainy and dry. It's got all these sort of things going on. There's a slight bit of sweetness to this one, and then you've got just a little bit of an oily, fruity character to this beer as well. But overall, I think Remmarlöv Gårdsbryggeri have done a solid job of this. I'm surprised they didn't release this as a 440, but you know, to some extent I can understand it, because a Rauchbier, it's a bit of an acquired taste. There's a lot of people that love these beers, absolutely love them, and I think it's one of these ones that you either really, really love it, or otherwise you just don't like it. I think there's not really an in-between with these, so I can understand why they would do them as a 330 rather than a 440, because maybe people would be reluctant to buy a 440 can of a Rauch beer, because this beer probably would be a bit more expensive than importing Schlenkerla from Germany. Actually, that's an interesting point that I never thought of before. So yeah, you get Schlenkerla in the half-litre bottles up here, but then a Swedish brewed Rauchbier probably costs a little bit more than an imported German one. So food for thought with that. But yeah, like I say, a solid take on the Rauchbier. More, it is quite bready, but it's a bit more balanced than I initially thought it was going to be from the aroma in that sense. But yeah, lovely depth to it, and I think Remmarlöv are showing that they're you can see them sort of getting better and better at lagers all the time. Every lager that I try from these guys, it seems to be, you know, you can see like a steady improvement between them. But definitely cool to see them have a go at a Rauchbier, and I think we have had, I don't know if we had one Rauchbier from these guys before, but we've certainly had a few different lagers. So maybe I told you a lie at the start of the video when I said I didn't have a Rauchbier from these guys. We might well have had one smoked beer from them in the past, come to think of it. But yeah, regardless, this one I thought was nicely done. Is it the craziest and kind of most exciting beer you're going to have from these guys? Maybe not, but I think it's really well done. And I think when it comes to these lager beers as well, it is about authenticity, and I think they've got that side of it well done. So yeah, big thumbs up to Remmarlöv Gårdsbryggeri once again. And this is a nice way to kind of come back into reviewing some Swedish beers for you. So yeah, some Swedish stuff coming up. Working my way through the remnants of my Romanian. I've got one or two. I think I've got an Austrian one left. I've got some Estonians. We're just working my way through the rest of the stockpile, and then complementing it with a few Swedish and Danish things over the next little while. So keep your eyes peeled. Lots of interesting reviews coming up. But I hope you enjoyed this one. This was the Rauchbier, 5.2% ABV from Remmarlöv Gårdsbryggeri in Eslöv here in Skåne in the south of Sweden. Until the next time, thank you for watching. Check out my other reviews. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Remmarlöv Gårdsbryggeri. Check out their social media. Check out my social media. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.